Let's take a dive into what would happen if the Aztecs successfully defeated the Spanish by staging a comeback. What would the implications have been for the history of North and South America? In this video, we will look at the conditions that would be required and what the Aztecs could have done to bring about their victory. Welcome to our channel. We focus on topics in history and alternative history. Let's start with a quick recap. The empire was founded in 1428 and lasted until the Spanish conquest of 1521. The Aztecs were the dominant power of the region, possessing a vast territory and ruling over vassal states. The Aztec were believed to have migrated from northern Mexico and, under the guidance of notable leaders like Montezuma, went on to forge a powerful empire from a position of relative weakness and adversity. After a long migration, they settled into the Valley of Mexico, around what was then Lake Texcoco, and now the site of Mexico City. Their capital, Tenochtitlan, was said to have been a modern wonder of man-made islands and channels, and a productive source of agriculture. But how did the empire actually decline in our timeline? Like other societies, the Aztecs were greatly weakened by the arrival of smallpox, which followed the Europeans into the region. As a result, the Aztecs struggled to field a force sufficient enough to repel the Spanish, as they otherwise might have. Additionally, owing to their brutal rule, the Aztecs' vassals were quick to abandon their masters, switching their allegiance to the Spanish, who, although having their own methods of repression, were willing to co-opt existing power structures into the administration of what would soon to become known as New Spain. This combination of factors ultimately led to the spectacular fall of the Aztecs during the Battle of Tenochtitlan. To set the conditions of Aztec success, let's start with smallpox. In this new timeline, owing to the people of the Americas having a better response to the disease, its impact was muted and only led to a small-scale impact. Perhaps this was due to a combination of factors such as a better genetic response, the disease's earlier introduction by shipwrecked European sailors, or the availability of highly effective local treatments. The Spanish were also greatly aided by their local allies, all of whom had lived under quite a repressive rule under the Aztecs for generations. Presuming through rebellions which shook the Aztecs, or the enlightened rule of a benevolent ruler, the Aztecs decided to stop their grisly practices and move towards a model of economic centralization, akin to a tributary system, rather than outright sacrificial methods. Now let's talk about technology. The potential impact of the Aztecs adopting Spanish military tools and techniques. By using the knowledge of captured Spaniards, the Aztecs went on to locate iron deposits and exploited their use and developed advanced smelting abilities, forging firearms and other tools which went out of their reach in our timeline. Coupled with this, captured Spanish horses, including those able to breed, would have led to vast numbers of Aztec cavalry forces, acting as a highly mobile and potent force. The Spanish were forced to leave Tenochtitlan between the 30th of June and the 1st of July, but instead went for the coast, instead of seeking refuge in Tlaxcala as they did in our timeline. There, Cortés, the leader of the Spanish expedition into Aztec territory, was arrested by Governor Diego Velázquez for insubordination in relation to his attempted conquest and expedition into Aztec lands. Leaving weapons, captives, and horses, the Aztecs used their knowledge of captured Spanish prisoners to locate iron deposits and develop blacksmithing and smelting capabilities. Coupled with the availability of gunpowder, the Aztec military forces are quick to equip themselves with iron weapons, small arms, and artillery pieces. The Aztecs also take advantage of horses left behind by the Spanish retreat. Luckily, the Mexican climate is ideal for horse breeding, and soon the Aztecs also boast a significant cavalry force, some of which are equipped with firearms and armor. After their initial defeat, it took the Spanish 5 years to build up their forces again, which now includes individuals from across Europe looking to claim their fortune. With this false sense of security, having seen the Aztecs' technology during their last conflict, the Spanish believed they possessed a force large enough to summarily defeat the Aztecs. This is compounded by periodic contact with Aztec vassal states, who deliberately feed misinformation to Spanish forces regarding the Aztecs' military's condition and state of preparedness. When the Spanish arrive in Veracruz, they are met with claims of allegiance from Aztec vassals. But this is a trap. False promises are simply a ruse, pre-planned to lure Spanish forces into a false sense of security. Once prepared, the combined Spanish and local forces march westward, and in order to cross the trans-Mexican volcanic belt, make for a site of the modern town of Tanaloco, which sits in the valley to the south of the Cofre de Perote. The Spaniards' local guides, having built trust over the last few days by helping to stage false ambushes of their own, lead the Spanish into a gully with dense vegetation on either side, which slopes upwards as hills. The Aztecs having had cleared vegetation beforehand. Retreat is blocked by the rolling of large boulders and trees behind the column at the start of the ambush. The column seeks to make its escape by either running into the thick forest either side of the gully or pushing out of the gully itself. However, Aztec forces lie in wait. At the top of the hill, Aztec canyons open fire, killing many. Archers are also placed along the route of the gully, under the cover of trees, attempting to pick those off who try to make their escape ahead. By the end of the battle, Spanish forces are decimated, with most either killed or captured. A small number of Spaniards, at the end of the column, manage to escape and make a hasty retreat for the coast, although most of these men are also dispatched or captured over the next several days. The Aztecs are now empowered and proceed to expand their empire throughout Central and North America. They take retribution on the Spaniards by carrying out mass sacrifice of prisoners of war, thanking their gods for a stunning turn of events. They also make a point of leveling the population centers of those tribes whose loyalty was not considered absolute. Neighboring kingdoms, confederacies, tribes, such as Mayans and Tarascans, learn about the Spanish defeat and become part of the Aztec Empire. This process is far more compelling since the Aztecs have agreed to make changes to the way they governed and treat their vassal states. Eventually, news of the defeat reaches the Spanish in the Caribbean. Infuriated by their lack of success, they instead pause any future efforts to expand their territory. Eventually, they begin establishing contact with the Aztecs once more. However, these episodes are fleeting and heavily geared towards trade and building trust over time. With the Aztecs now controlling a vast territory that expands north, central, and parts of South America, the Spanish lack the motivation and resources to attempt another conquest. Also, other European powers are preoccupied with regional conflicts in Europe, and instead opt to trade with the Aztecs and other emerging powers in the area. This leads to a proliferation of trade and transfers of technology, further strengthening the hand of local powers in the Americas. The Aztecs also expanded their network within North and South America. Seeking exotic goods and services, European technology eventually finds its way into the hands of indigenous North American societies, and further south into minor kingdoms and eventually the Incan Empire. By 1700, the Americas look vastly different to our timeline. Adoption of European technology has led to seismic changes in the life of many societies. Most changes are positive, such as a surplus in the food supply and health-related advancements, which has led to huge population booms. Others are negative, such as the introduction of opium. Seeing the harm it has caused many, indigenous leaders adopt a concerted campaign to eradicate its use, which is largely successful. This leads to tensions with the British Empire, but without a sufficient toehold in the Americas, they are not able to do much about it. With the defeat of the Spanish and a more cautious approach by other European powers, the success of Christianity in our timeline is tempered. Instead, local and native religions continue to be practiced and grow. Where Christianity does take a foothold, beliefs are often blended with native religions and traditions. This leads to an interesting blending of cultures and beliefs. Other religions from further afield also begin to appear in the Americas, such as Buddhism, Islam, and Sikhism. Attracted by the burgeoning population of the Western Hemisphere, trading posts and communities begin springing up. Perhaps most interestingly, the transatlantic slave trade never reaches the same scale as it does in our period. Without a European presence in the Americas, and without the need for a captive labor force, Africans were largely spared the horrors they endured in our timeline. The strongest and fittest men and women would instead remain on the continent. Who knows what outcomes this may have led to? This could have included a more concerted and successful effort to resist the Europeans carving up the continent. European business and colonial empires built on slave labor would have likewise never materialized. Lacking the funding or resources to undertake larger conquests in other parts of the world, such as Asia, perhaps we would not have seen the establishment of large colonial empires in the East. The Aztecs themselves would have needed to contend with the growing power of regional rivals, and, unable to rely on military domination alone, eventually became one of many great powers in the region. Conflicts often did occur, however the patchwork of states and alliances led to a system of informal checks and balances, very much similar to Europe and South Asia. Well, that's it for today's episode. I really hope you enjoyed it. Please do hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more content. See you in the next one.